Bonjour à tous et bienvenue. My name is Joe Mistro, and as the current president of l'Union Française, I'm delighted to welcome you to our virtual event today, named Château de Belcastel to Bellecastle Street, a 1,000-year journey. This is a really special program that I'm sure you will enjoy, and we're delighted to have people joining us for this presentation. First, I want to introduce l'Union Française to those of you who may not be familiar with us. Our organization was founded in 1872 and is the oldest Franco-American nonprofit in New Orleans. Our mission is to promote the French language and the French and Francophone cultures in New Orleans and throughout the state of Louisiana and beyond. We offer French language classes for adults that are very affordable, with a new semester starting in January that will feature online classes so that you can take our classes from anywhere. We are also hosting free online French conversation groups on Zoom called La Table Française Virtuelle for those of you who want to practice your French in an informal setting. Those take place on the first and third Wednesday evening of every month. Check out our website, l'unionfrancaise.org, or our Facebook and Instagram accounts, which you can find at Union Française NOLA for more information and the spring schedule, as well as to keep up with future events. Now onto our program. Château de Belcastel rises high above the medieval village of Bellecastle, designated as one of les plus beaux villages de France. The chateau and the village, located in southwestern France in the Aveyron region, have a deep connection to New Orleans, which we shall explore. We'll start with a short tour of the village itself, followed by a tour of the chateau by Heidi Leigh, proprietor of the chateau. After Heidi's tour, Tom Soniat will pick up on the story. At the end, Heidi, Tom, and Tina Gomez will be available to answer questions about our program. If you have any questions or comments during the program, please put those in the chat anytime and we will answer them during the Q&A portion later. So first, we're going to start with a short 1-minute video introduction to Bellecastle. This will be in French, will last 1 minute, and then we'll proceed to the tour of the chateau, which will be in English.
Trésor d'architecture médiévale, Bellecastel a été officiellement classé plus beau village de France par le ministère français de la Culture. En empruntant des chemins pavés, les visiteurs peuvent s'y promener et apprécier les anciennes demeures fleuries, au toit de l'Auze, ou pique-niquer au bord de l'Aveyron, cette magnifique rivière qui traverse le village. Le village est entouré des sentiers de randonnée de classe mondiale, offrant des vues panoramiques exceptionnelles sur des paysages bucoliques. La beauté authentique de ce petit village, sa riche histoire et ses scènes exceptionnelles d'art, de culture et de gastronomie en font une destination unique et inoubliable. Au-dessus du village, sur un gigantesque piton rocheux, se dresse une magnifique forteresse construite il y a 1000 ans. Né d'une chapelle au IXe siècle, le château de Belcastel grandit au fil des siècles, des générations de chevaliers, de nobles et de fripons, laissant leur héritage à l'intérieur de la forteresse.
Isn't that beautiful? So now we're going to go to the video tour by Heidi Leigh, proprietor of the chateau. Enjoy.
Bienvenue and welcome to Château Belcastel. My name is Heidi Leigh and I am the proprietor of this historic landmark. And I acquired it 16 years ago in 2005. And I'm a galleryist from New York and I've been invited to take you through and give you a tour. And there's a very interesting relationship between New Orleans and Château de Belcastel and the Soniat family. And it's really, it's a fun fact. I'll make it like a fun fact. So there was this man from Bellecastle a long time ago in the 15th century. And it must have been about a girl, nobody really knows, but he was chasing another man around France because he wanted to kill him. So he never caught him, but he found out that this man went to the New World. So there was a relationship between this Soniat here and the king. So the king gave him a job so he could go to the New World to find this guy and kill him. So he went to New Orleans to set up the first French administration. And he never found this guy, but he found a beautiful woman. They were married and they had 17 children. And he built a house for them in New Orleans that today is the Soniat Hotel. So there we have it. He was happily ever after with his big family. And now there are thousands of Soniats in New Orleans. So that's it. Sometimes they come and visit, and it's always a pleasure to have them here. So I hope you come. And today the tour is going to be through the castle. It's going to be focused on the historic architecture of the castle, and I have a couple of things to show you that are really interesting with the Soniat family. And you will also see exhibitions of art and sculpture. There's a lot of information about it on our website, Château de Belcastel, and also on the social media, it's at Château de Belcastel. So if you're curious and you want information about the artists or anything else, please check it out there, because this is going to be a brief tour and there's just not enough time for all of it. So we will start with the beginning. It's a 9th century chateau that, well, it's an 11th century chateau built on a 9th century chapel. And it went through centuries of knights and nobles and even rogues that lived here. The history is very rich. And in 1973, it was a ruin after a woman in the village bought it when it was abandoned for about 100 years. And she opened it up like a vertical rock quarry. So people came and they took away the stones from the windows and the doors. And so this is what Fernand Pouillon discovered and decided to make it his home. So for 9 years, there were a dozen rock masons and glaziers who lived here, and they built it with no modern machines, all medieval technique. And so now we have this historic landmark with the changes that Fernand Pouillon made to it. And he's an astonishing architect. He built more than 3 million square meters of public housing during his lifetime. And so this year, one of the exhibitions is about Fernand Pouillon. But like I said, we're going to focus on the castle. So here's one of the 17 freshwater moat systems in France. And usually the water comes pouring out of this fountain and then it goes out in waterfalls along the back. It's so beautiful. But now it's been dry. So the main fountain is dry. But as soon as we have a rain, it comes spewing out. It's wonderful. So, come in. Now we're in the main courtyard, and we have vernissages and parties and weddings here. Sometimes it's fun. There's been concerts and even an opera once. This part of the stone was hewn out, and it was the only place where the horses could turn around. If the people of the village and the animals had to come up here to be protected, it would have been the Lord's responsibility to take care of them and was an impenetrable fortress. Nobody was ever able to attack it. The defensive architectural benefits of being on a rock and up so high are really formidable. So we're going to go down this 9th century road on this side. No, this is the 9th century side. And that Fernand Pouillon did in the 70s. This is a really authentic, original 9th century pre-Romanesque chapel. And here we have, you can see a table of the dead where the lords would have been emptied when they died. Here's a hole for a baptismal font and a tomb where Château de Belcastel, who was a monk, rests eternally. And here's our fresco of Mary Magdalene. This is the region of the Da Vinci Code around here, and the region where the Cathars were very strong. The Cathars were a big threat to the Catholic Church, and so they were destroyed, and all of their churches became Catholic churches. Interesting history with the Cathars. It was a Christian religion where men and women were equal, and they were vegetarians, and they didn't listen to. I mean, they read the Bible in French, not in Latin. And here's the 11th century cistern where monks would have lived during the beginning, before the castle was built. And there are holes at the top of the wall where there would have been a support for a false ceiling. And if someone was hiding up there, they could poison the moat and collect fresh rainwater from that vantage. So the moat is just on the other side of that. So now we will enter the castle, and Fernand Pouillon, rebuilt these original, the original entrance. And here's the Soniat coat of arms. When the Soniacs were here, they spelled the name a little bit differently. And when they moved to New Orleans, they changed it from Soniac to Soniat. So, but it's the same family. This is the salle de garde, the knight's room. It's a wonderful representation of kind of an architecture that was popular until the 11th century. And then after the 11th century, they didn't do it anymore just because it's too labor intensive. I like this room. See how little they were? And now we're going to go up into the western courtyard. Here's the toilet Moyen Age. It works it still works. And Fernand Pouillon left this hole here so that we could see what he had to contend with. Because when they took away the stones from the windows, it really left a wreck. So this is unrestored, and it really manifested the architect's idea of a romantic ruin. And at the same time, he incorporated clever modern amenities. Over here, for example, around the Romanesque arch, he incorporated glass to bring light into this medieval fortress. So Bellecastle does not mean beautiful castle. It means warrior fortress. And so it's because it's medieval, the rooms are more small, and it's very different than a palace. So now we're going to come in and go to the prison. Everybody had one. So now it's a fabulous exhibition space. But in front of this dehumidifier, there's a hole, and it probably would have served as a medieval toilet. Well, certainly. And over here, there are holes in the wall, original ones, where there would have been shackles and a table. It was just normal in those days. Part of the history of this castle was that for a time, there were bandits that came here, and when the crown wanted to use this castle for for his own soldiers, he couldn't get the bandits out. He had to bribe them out. Now we're going to the top of the Great Stair, and we'll go to a small little gallery up there. Where you will be able to see some of the architectural drawings that Fernand Pouillon did before he realized this and turned this ruin into a fortress. He also helped to restore the entire village, which was a pile of rocks, and it's now one of France's official most beautiful villages. So in this little exhibition space, I have on display these wonderful architectural drawings. This architect was really a visionary, and the people of the village are really happy that he came here and did this. There really was no village. There was nothing happening. Everything was just abandoned. And now it's a very popular place to visit because it's so beautiful and authentic. And there's some wonderful restaurants in the village, and it's super charming. So now we'll go past the dungeon. The dungeon is the word for the keep. So we're already halfway up. So you could see how if an enemy were to approach, it would be pretty terrifying to imagine that you were going to attack it. They never threw boiling oil out of the dungeon because it was just too valuable. And there were some cannonballs that I found on the property when I came here. So somebody tried, but and they're big cannonballs. They're about this big. They're huge. And another thing that Fernand Pouillon did was to create these two beautiful windows on the Great Stair where we can see the ancient stones. Welcome to the principal gallery. And we'll go and have a beautiful view on the balcony. This is where the guests of the chambre d'hôte have breakfast or sometimes an aperitif. It's very quiet. You can hear church bells. That's the little chapel, and behind it, in the plain grass tomb, is where Fernand Pouillon is buried. And this is a historic bridge. Normally, the water is up to where the grass is, so you can see it's a bit dry right now, but it's still so green here in the Aveyron. It's cooler than most parts of France. There's beautiful hills and, you know, filled with flowers all summer. I really love it here. Now we're going down past the chambre d'hôte. Now it's occupied, so we can't go in there, but you can see pictures on the website. And this is a bird tower. Fernand Pouillon created this tower. He rebuilt it only for the birds because there's no access unless you can fly in. And there's a big white owl and her baby that have been living up there. And the mother's been teaching the baby how to fly. They come out of the tower and land here and poop, and then come back up and then back and forth. So from here we can see the courtyard where we came in, and there's another garden over there. And we're going down now into the 15th century chapel, which you can see is really opened up with light, you know, because of the glass. But again, the medieval shape is mimicked. The architect did this restoration with so much integrity. So I've really tried to keep this open. You know, there's not a lot of furniture and stuff in the castle. The guide is free for the visitors, and that means they go through the visit with a numerical tour, and they can take their time. It usually takes about an hour. So here's the 15th century chapel, because the Lord would have had his own chapel. And again, you can see the special little windows just for the bow and arrow, and everything is defensive in a medieval castle. And all of the original windows would have been tiny, small enough so that a child could not fit through. And that's why they call the Middle Ages the Dark Ages. And in the Renaissance time, glass became very popular. The best glaziers were Italians, and they were given a lot of benefits to come and move to France and build, create windows, because it was prestigious and wonderful, and and people were having beautiful windows in their homes. You know, before that it was only churches. So here is what I call the money shot round window. It's just a lovely view, and that fig tree needs to be pruned. We have very nice figs back there. There's a beautiful swimming pool, and it's private. We keep it private for the suite guests. And I go in there too. So now we go into the blue room. Before let's go in here. Here you can see Fran Aveyron. And the blue room with, again, the pre-Romanesque windows. And a beautiful view with a beautiful sculpture. And in here, we have a couple of funny things. These will, most people don't realize that they're so funny, but I'll tell you why they're so funny. The Black Prince is an infamous English Dauphin, the son of the king, and he was invincible in battle. And so he was a formidable warrior, and he always wore black. And this helmet actually came from the Warwick Castle collection in England. And the reason that this is funny with these two horses is because after the Black Prince came and rode into France one day and actually captured the king during lunch, he's been, you know, one of the most notorious and infamous knights in French history. They don't like him at all. And so here we have the French Grand Templar Master, who was Guillaume de Soniat. And so he was a cousin of the Soniat family, I think. You know, his name is spelled a little bit different, but they probably, well, most certainly came from the same line. And so this Grand Templar Master was the one who created the world's first banking system, because they were wealthy. They didn't pay taxes, and so they were sort of above the king in a way, and they were religious knights. So you know, they were good people, and so the reason Friday the 13th is a bad luck day is because this is the day when Prince Philippe the Fair and his puppet Pope ambushed all of the Templars. And the Grand Templar Master at that time wasn't even burned alive. He was roasted alive. It was just terrible. But there were 67 ships off of the coast of France, and they disappeared that morning before the ambush. And they turned up certainly as the world's bankers in Switzerland, and the Masons and the founding fathers in the United States. Yeah, this is the history of the Templars is very interesting. And then here is a picture of Guillaume. It was really difficult to find this, but we found this picture. I have it from one of the Soniat family members, who is a count and lives outside of Paris. And he also gave this family tree to me, which I'm super happy to have. But it shows that the Soniat family has roots with Charlemagne and a king of Spain. And you can see when, you know, when it gets farther down, the relationship with the Dufossat family, the Dufossats, and some of the Dufossat family may live in New Orleans. I'm not sure. I'm not positive about that. So now we go to the dining room, and this room is open as part of the public tour, but we eat in here a lot. I love this girl with the unicorn. It's a reproduction of a wonderful tapestry that's very mysterious and interesting. And this fireplace, it was recreated where the original one was, and Fernand left this. He left this unfinished here on both sides, so we could see where the earth was in this room, because there were two great trees growing in this room. And it's a wonderful fireplace, and there's a big rotisserie system that he put in. He liked to cook. And now we'll go to the upper garden, and you can see a medieval sanctuary. People disagree about what it was. Some people think maybe it was for food storage. There were 3 mediums that were here separately, and they all say, oh, there was a woman in there. It would have been much deeper than it is now, but it's cool in there. I've had master classes in there, and it's a really nice place to be all summer because it's very cool. So let's go. Oh, hi. So there's a lovely view up here. And it's interesting, there's someone from the village is doing a little bit of excavation and just unearthing some of the stones that certainly would have been an extension of the chateau. And you have a really good view of the moat, and you can see how clear the water is. It's much deeper on the other side. I think 6 meters. And on the side it's 4. So this is the small medieval tower. And this entrance is bigger. So I don't know if we will ever know what this was, but certainly this would have been the top of it, and it would have been much taller. So I hope you enjoyed this little tour, and if you have other questions, there's a historic guide that's on the website, and you can buy that online, or the Soniat family knows a little bit more about this this castle. And this has been a very brief tour because it would have taken more than an hour to give you just the history. So it was kind of off the cuff and spontaneous, and I hope you liked it, and maybe we'll see you here someday. Thank you.
Wasn't that beautiful and a cool tour? Thank you very much, Heidi and Tina Gomez. Tina works as an intern.
Hello and welcome to Najak, and welcome to our holiday home. Follow me. First off, you look up there, you should be able to see.
Okay, sorry about the technical difficulties for a second. Tom Soniat, who is of the Soniat family that Heidi's been talking about, is going to give us a presentation to link the chateau and New Orleans and the family's history of New Orleans. So I'm going to turn this over to Tom.
Bonjour à tous. Welcome, everyone. My name is Tom Soniat. I'm a vice president of Union Française. Our family has a long connection to Louisiana and to the organization. My father was very active in Union and served as president of the organization in the 70s. So what I'm going to do now with a series of slides is take you on the next part of the tour. I'm going to take you from Bellecastle to New Orleans, but with an important stop in between. So here we are at Bellecastel. This slide was taken from the bridge in the village, looking up to the chateau. This bridge is over the river Aveyron, which gives its name to the entire area. It gives its name to the entire French département of the region. So from Bellecastel, the Dufossat line was established. It was in 1538 that Francois Soniat wed Jean de Perros. She brought to her marriage land, the Fossat land, which is near Saudarac. Saudarac today is about a 2-hour drive east of Bellecastel. Chateau Dufossat was built there as the family seat of this new branch of the Soniat family. Inside the church, you can see in the next slide, the tombs of the tomb of the family of the Dufossat line. And notice the spelling of the family name, Saunhac. So the original spelling and the original pronunciation would have been something like Soniat, and Soniat, as the name is spelled today, is a phonetic spelling. The original pronunciation would have been something like Soniat, and even though today we pronounce the family name Soniat. So this is the line of the family that was established around Saudarac. It's a branch of the branch that came off of the Bellecastle line. It's from Château Dufossat that the original Soniat came to Louisiana. Chevalier Guy Soniat Dufossat arrived in Louisiana in 1751. It's there in America, he changed the name to its present spelling. Many places in America now bear the Soniat family name. Particularly noteworthy is the Soniat House in the French Quarter of New Orleans. It is now a luxury hotel, but it was established by Joseph Soniat for his very large family. The original Soniat, Guy, he married Claudine Drew, the daughter of one of the most prominent Creole families in Louisiana. And it's their son, Joseph Soniat Dufossat, who built the Soniat House in 1829. And almost all of the Soniats today, there are about 6 major branches of the family. Almost all of the Soniats in Louisiana today come from his lineage. In the uptown section of New Orleans, near Union Francaise, are 4 streets: Bellecastle, Soniat, Soniat Street, and what we now pronounce Dufossat, or Dufossat Street. These all bear witness to a connection between New Orleans and Bellecastel, France. So it was in 1841 that Robert Alvar subdivided his property just upriver from Bouligny section. He named 1 street for himself, Robert Street, and 3 streets for his son-in-law. His son-in-law was named Valmont Soniat Dufossat. Bellecastle, as shown in the next slide, was named for the ancestral seat of the Soniat family. And so this is how it is that Bellecastle, a short street in New Orleans, reveals a long history of the connection between our city and a beautiful castle in one of the most beautiful villages in France. So back to you, Joe.
Tom, thank you for that great presentation linking Heidi and Tina's beautiful video to New Orleans. That's what we're so excited about with this event is L'Union Française is uniquely positioned with the shared history to make these links between New Orleans and France and the families that came here from France to populate New Orleans in the early days. So I would like to, that was Tom Soniat who gave that presentation. I'd like to reintroduce Heidi Leigh, proprietor of the Chateau, and Tina Gomez, who has worked as an intern and tour guide at the Chateau. And we're gonna take questions. So if you have any questions, whether you're watching us on Facebook or Zoom, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them. So first question that I have is, came in through the chat. So I think Tina and Heidi can answer this. Maybe let's start with Tina. Tina, tell us about the Soniat history and how they came to own the castle or the Chateau, please.
Hi. So I saw at the video, do you remember when Heidi was at the prison and she talked about when the castle was owned by the bandits? It was occupied by bandits in the 14th century. So back then, the castle was, back then and today, the castle's defensive system was so good that the bandits stayed there, and even though the king and the owners of the chateau tried to get them out, they couldn't because the castle was very well protected. And the one that could get them out was Jean d'Armagnac, who was a chevalier of the king, and he bribed them out. He told the bandits that he will pay them if they got out of the castle, so he exchanged it for money. But he made a trap, so once they got out, he killed them all except Merigot Marches, which was the leader, and he took him to the king. And then Jean d'Armagnac decided to give this castle as a gift to his squire, who was Guillaume de Soniat, and that's how the castle got to the Soniat family.
Heidi, do you have anything to add with that? I'd also like to ask you about how did you discover the Chateau and become involved with Château de Belcastel?
Oh, this is a magic answer. As far as the Soniacs go, I will just leave that alone. But as far as discovering the castle, it's an extraordinary thing because in the same way that the original Belcastels came to this savage land, like way back in the first century, and imagined to build this fortress and out of this rock was just it was insane. They must have been really, really motivated. And then the same thing with the Soniat family and Alziz de Soniat, because he is the one who built the keep and the bridge in the village, the church in the village, and he really he took it from its more raw beginnings, which were the towers and the things, the rooms around the keep. And of course the first rooms, the old chapel and we'll call that a cistern, and he just did so much. It was a huge work, and it was huge for the chateau and the village as well. And then after it was laid to ruin, Fernand Pouillon had this vision to see this ruin where the ivy was holding up the walls, and to imagine resurrecting it, that was also insane, you know, and to do it with medieval equipment and techniques. You know, when people come and they visit the castle, they have a really interesting experience, like every day. Like you know, they just are really impressed, you know, about this restoration. Because it's so huge. And for me, it was the same thing. You said, how did I discover it? It was literally on the internet, but when the first time that I went there, I saw these beautiful twinkling gallery lights in the prison and a panel, because the previous owner did photography and had a photo collection up in there. And I just fell madly in love instantly. And so it happens, you know, and it's happened again and again, you know, that the stones seem to call to people. So yeah, it's extraordinary. And I met someone in France about more than a year ago, and he's come to the castle and done so much to just to do this neglected maintenance on it that's made it so much more beautiful than it ever was. And it's the same thing, you know, it's like the stones were singing to him too. So,
I love.
I hope that wasn't.
Go ahead, Heidi.
No, I was just finished. I really went off on you know, in the bushes in that one, but there's no way to explain that is not magical, because it's a very emotional experience.
I love that. And one of the things that's really interesting to me, and somebody asked about it, is the fact that you display artwork there. So I know you are involved in the art world. Can you talk a little bit about how you brought art to the chateau, and what do you do with it?
Sure. Okay. Now we're getting into insanity squared, because I, you know, crossed an ocean and, you know, went to a country where I don't speak the language and set up contemporary exhibitions in a medieval castle. But it seems to be working. I love the juxtaposition of the contemporary work and the ancient stones, and I think the creative juice that the exhibitions bring to the chateau add to the life in the chateau, and we are living there. Tina was living there last summer, you know, with this, you know, normally we have more interns, but this summer just one. But because there's people living in there, and food smells in there, and music that vibrates in the stones for days, you know, it's just very different than a ruin that you walk through and you can feel the stones just taking life, you know, through your feet. It's a really different experience. Tom knows, don't you?
I add something to that, what you said. I think also there's a beautiful dialogue between what you said, the ancient stones and the contemporary art. And especially is not what people expect to see in a medieval castle. I worked at the reception of the castle. I talked with the visitors every day, and many of them were especially surprised because they didn't expect contemporary art in a medieval castle, and that's especially that's concretely what makes them think and reflect and arrive to different conclusions from what they thought they would when they were coming to the castle.
I'm curious, and I think other people are too. And Tina and Heidi, you can both talk to this. What is it like living in a chateau? For those of us who've never lived in a French chateau before, tell us a little bit about it.
I know. Right now, it's cold. So about an hour ago, I landed in Tanzania. So I'll spend the winter in Africa where it's warmer, but it's cold in the winter. And in the summer, it's nice that it feels that you're so much a part of the land and the earth, because it's open, you know, and so the wind and the weather comes through the castle, and there's bats, and they eat all of the bugs, so there's no bugs, and it's like, I'm not making this up. It's kind of like Camelot, because it rains in the middle of the night and then it's beautiful all day, right, Tina? It's wonderful living there, and it's magical, and there's just life in these ancient stones. It's fun. It's fun.
Can you, Tina and Heidi, can you tell us a little bit about the village and the region for those who are not familiar with the Aveyron region of France?
Tina?
Well, so although I was there this COVID summer, I had the chance to visit the region. It's in Occitanie. It's in the south of France, 2 hours to the north of Toulouse. And it's just so beautiful. It's everything beautiful, green landscape with medieval towns, with medieval little villages. And I read it's the French department that has more of these, the most beautiful villages of France. There are 10 most beautiful villages of France in the whole department. And trust me, they are really, really beautiful. It's like people, the craziest thing that I saw was that people live in these medieval villages. They walk through 12th century roads and go to the market that it has been there for 8 centuries. And it's just part of their life, and it's so normal, and they just love it, and they don't think about it. But for me, it was crazy. I mean, I was like amazed that they were doing that. And I really love that it's very well preserved. They know that that their patrimony is very important. They take care of it, and they show it in a beautiful and respectful way, just like Château de Belcastel and the village of Bellecastle. The village is like full of very, very Pinterest. I don't know if there's the word in English, but it's like a fairy tale. It's like you're inside a fairy tale with all the houses and the flowers and the smells and the people and the bells from the church and the river. It's just crazy, magical.
Yeah, there's a lot of criteria to be met when there's an official Plubo village. The village has to be, it's very authentic. And that bridge is a famous bridge because the 100-Year War was fought on it. And then there's a beautiful sarcophagus of Elzise de Soniat in the little chapel. And a Michelin star restaurant as well, which is really outstanding. And so it's a very popular village. There's about 250,000 people that come to just walk through Bellecastle every season.
Here's a question for maybe Tom can answer, or Heidi. Do the Soniat and Dufossat families still live in the region? Are there still members of the families there?
Yeah, I can talk to that. There are more Soniats in Louisiana than there are Soniacs in France. My good friend Jean Gillet from Rodez took me to a place in Rodez, which is a Soniac street in Rodez. And there are people that have that family name, but there are more Soniats in America than there are Soniacs in France now.
And then someone asked about the architect that you were speaking about, Heidi, in the tour. So Fernand Pouillon, how long did it take him to restore the chateau?
Almost 9 full years.
Wow, that's incredible. And he was famous for doing other things as well. What were some of the other major projects or things that he would have been well known for?
Well, on the facade of the donjon in the tour, you may have noticed this kind of a crazy looking canvas. It was a photograph of a life-size photograph of a project for public housing that he built in Algeria. He was commissioned at the time when France had a colony in Algeria. He was commissioned to build 3 cities because when French moved in, they commandeered part of the inner cities, and all these people were living in the outskirts. And so when he built these cities, he built it with love and integrity, and there were grand openings, and there were huge green spaces and mosques and retail spaces, and it was really extraordinary what he did. And these people today are living in buildings that have been declared like national treasures, and they're very proud to live in a building that Fernand Pouillon built. And it was funny, a lot of times this summer, people came and they would criticize the, I mean, it's a project, it's like a, low income project. And they would criticize that being on a chateau. But then when they understood the connection, and Stéphane Couturier is a real rock star of an artist in France. He's really well known, and he's done a lot of museum exhibitions. So it was a really interesting collaboration with the heritage of Fernand Pouillon, an association, and it was really nice to introduce so many people to this architect that they just didn't know about him before, just because it's a new generation. Older people in France know who he is, but he built train stations in Iran, and he built ports, the port in Marseille. He rebuilt it. He did a lot of huge projects, because after World War II, after the Nazis blasted things, there was a need for public housing. So he built a lot of public housing outside of Paris and in different areas in Paris, or in France. But when you think about how big 3 million square meters of public housing is, it's just mind-boggling. It's huge. I think a legacy.
Yeah, I think that's interesting how he built the cités, the public housing, these big public housing projects, but at the same time, he restored this beautiful medieval chateau. It's quite a legacy of an architect's career, and quite a breadth of different things that he did. Sure. Tom, there's a question for you. So how did the Dufossat family come into existence? How did that name come into existence?
Well, that's from the Dufossat land. So there was someone that came from Bellecastle and married into that Dufossat property around Sauderat. So it's the Soniats of Dufossat essentially is what that means.
And we were talking earlier, does the family have a connection to the Knights Templar, the Soniat family?
Yeah, well, Heidi showed, the knight up on the horse, and he was Grand Master of the Knights of the Templar. And he was Guillaume Soniat. There were a number of Guillaume Soniats in the family lineage. And this history is so long, a lot of things tend to become conflated and maybe confused. But there was Guillaume Soniat was a Grand Master of the Knights of the Templar. And in France, there are different ways that the name was spelled as well. His name is sometimes spelled Sonnac, which again, you know, is Soniat. And he was responsible for starting a lot of records relating to the Knights of the Templar. So historians use that because he was the first one that started keeping good records about the Knights.
But what he was doing, he created the world's first banking system, because when in the medieval days, it was very dangerous to travel because there were so many robbers and you know, bandits on the road. And so if you had money, you wore it. You wanted to look like all that, because then they would kidnap you instead of killing you. And this is what was happening in, you know, in the castle with this notorious bandit. And, you know, he would leave people to languish in the prison until somebody would come and pay for them. But in any case, I think that I just really forgot what I was going to say, where I was going with this. I haven't slept for a long time. Sorry.
It's been a long flight to Tanzania.
Oh, no, I know what I was going to say. As far as the banking system went, what they did was to create a system where they were using all of their fortresses and fortified, you know, chateaus, and you know, because they had a lot of property all over France. And so instead of schlepping your stuff and your gold and, you know, your valuables around with you, you could deposit, you know, money or, you know, valuables at one location, and they would give you a coded ticket, which is worth nothing to a robber. And then you could take it to a different location and get your money back. So that's why they're called the world's first bankers.
Yeah.
So we have another question that came in, and talking about chateaus and old places to live. So in New Orleans, there's a lot of places in the French Quarter that are supposedly haunted. Is the chateau haunted? Are there any ghosts in the chateau? Are there any stories about that?
It's not really a problem. I mean, there is, but she's like part of the family, and she's not maniacal or it's, yes.
And do we know who it is, Heidi?
We do. Her name is Cecile, and she was married to a Soniat, and she was married. And I always thought that the story was that he came home from, you know, pillaging or whatever, you know, they were doing, and he brought back a younger woman, because Cecile was she was older. She was in her early 50s. But a couple of years ago, some of the Soniats from France came and gave us the real story. And there are records in the historical records that confirm this and everything else. But when he came home from, and this was Elzaz II. So when Elzaz II came home from, he had been away for, you know, with the 100-Year War. So she was the one who had the lover. And so he immediately threw her out the window to her death. And the lover drew a sword on Elzaz II, who was inflicted with a mortal wound. And so Cecile and Elzaz died within like a week of each other.
Wow, that's interesting story. Is she in a particular room in the chateau, or does she wander in multiple spaces?
She moves around, and do you really want to hear this?
Absolutely, tell us.
No, she moves around, and it's a spirit that is that's lonely, and it's a spirit that is she she's annoying when you're leaving, when the family is leaving, and things disappear, especially things like passports and keys. And you know that they were there, a few minutes ago. And so then you spend, 20 minutes looking all over the place, and then all of a sudden, then you give up, and there it is, right exactly where it was, where you thought you put it in the first place. And yeah, that happens a lot, and this is one of the best ways to give a perfect example of how I know it's a real ghost. So I have my keys, and I'm leaving, and I have everything I need. I'm going out the door, and I'm looking out the blue room where the horses are, and a key falls off of my key ring. But my key ring is together with some of those circular things that you go windy. Like a key can't fall off of that thing. It falls off, and I'm walking this way, but the key goes that way under the heater. So I get down and I reach for this key, but it's just too far away. So I need a tool to pull it out from under the heater. So I go up to the chauffery, the boiler room, to get the tool, to get the thing out. And I get up there, and it's the boiler room key that must be under the heater because it's not on my keychain. So I go into the Akai, the admissions building, to get the spare, but it's not in there. It's somewhere else. So, I go to the top of the dungeon, to find it up in the green room, and it's not there. So then I'm thinking, okay, one of the interns left it in the gallery. So voila, I find it in the gallery. So then I go back to the chauffery, I get the tool, I get the key, but meanwhile, it's been like 20 minutes up and down, it's great exercise, but it's a typical way of just things just can be convoluted, like she's sucking energy or attention. And I think I've been living with it for 16 years, and it's, Tina, did you ever have experiences with her? Tina?
I did. I have to say I did. Once I was about going out with a boy that I met in France, and I couldn't find my phone. I just couldn't find it. And I was so excited because we were going out, we were going to another village, and it was going very well with him. And I was in a hurry. He was waiting for me outside the castle, and I couldn't find my phone. And I spent like that 20-30 minutes searching for my phone. And then I said, okay, it's all right. I'll just live without it. And I came back to the toilet, and I saw that the phone was inside the toilet. Not in the water, but in the toilet. And I would have never left it there. And I found it there, and I was like, okay.
Bizarre.
I'm sorry, Cecile, I have to go.
What she's been known for over the decades, and men of Bellecastle who have done work in the chateau, and Fernand Pouillon has documented this, and many men that I know of, men who are not single men, will hear her whispering their name. And this summer, in fact, there was a guy who came out of the castle, and he said, that was so clever, but it really freaked me out. And we're like, what? And he said, you have some kind of a recording of your ghost whispering my name? And we're like, no. So yeah, that's our little ghost. Yeah. A couple of people have seen her too. They've seen her.
And then I hear that you had a recent discovery. You found something, a 200-kilogram bell in the chateau. Tina or Heidi, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Luc was, he's the French companion that's out there with me. He's been doing some historical research, and he found a couple of interesting things recently. And yeah, this evidence of this bell and the weight of it, this 200 kilos, he discovered was up, up in the mezzanine, and it would have warned the people of the village to take cover, that the castle was under siege or something. He discovered something else that Tina knows about that would be very interesting if you want to share it, Tina, about the Kozenkloch.
The what? Sorry? The houses.
The little medieval fortified houses. In
So,
video, where they were doing the excavation and
exactly. Right in front of the castle, there's like another hill, and you can see from the video, it's on our YouTube channel also, so you can check it later. At the end of the video, when we go to the upper garden and we're overlooking the moat, before we see the moat, there's that hill. And you can see from the video, there are like small circles or semicircles of stones that show where the fortified houses used to be. And at the beginning of the video, when we go inside, when we cross the drawbridge, we say that the courtyard where the stone is curved in a curved shape, because it's where the horses would have turned. But these discoveries of these houses show us that maybe that circle shape is where the first of those fortified houses would have been, closer to the chapel that is just down the road. So that's very exciting for us to find out that.
It makes sense too, because it would have existed before the village of Bellecastle, and those people would have wanted to take that little road down to the chapel. And it doesn't make any sense that the people of the village needed a road past the chapel if they were all coming from below the castle. So that's a really interesting discovery, because there's another ancient chateau, a medieval chateau in the area that has some very famous old fortified houses like that. And I think they're built somewhere between 300 and 700. They're old, really old. But.
Well, after this tour and hearing about this, it really makes me want to come to Belcastel and visit the chateau and meet you guys in person. So can Tina, can you tell us how people can find out more about the chateau? Can you give us the website and social media handles, and when you guys are open for visitors?
So as Heidi said, right now the castle is really cold, because in winter it gets really cold. So it's closed until March, April. We will set the date soon. And you can find us.
Tina, it's open on April 2nd this year. The press conference is right. April 1st, and then it opens from April 2nd through November 15th in 2021.
Exactly. But to find out everything about us, you have our website, which is chateaubelcastel.com, and you have it in French and English, so you can practice your French also. And you can find us on social media with @Château Belcastel on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube.
And for 2021, I'm working on a really high profile, very interesting street art exhibition. And there will be 7 different artists, and it'll be an international show, one French artist, and there's some from Germany and Spain, and one from Puerto Rico. It's going to be very interesting.
Well, there's a reason to go visit right now. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to especially thank Heidi and Tina for giving us this beautiful tour and sharing this beautiful chateau with us. I think it's really interesting that we're able to make these connections and keep these connections between New Orleans and the Chateau and the village. I want to thank Tom Soniat for his presentation today and linking the two for us. You know, it's interesting, living in New Orleans and l'Union Française is in the uptown region of New Orleans. These streets are just within a few blocks of the l'Union Française house on Prytania Street. And so it's really cool that this is a part of our history and we're able to share this with everybody. Heidi, Tina, and Tom, anything else you want to add before we sign off?
I think that's it. And thanks to everyone.
Yes.
It was really nice to be here. And thank you, Joe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Tina, Heidi,
A
Tom.
very good pleasure. It was so cool. You're very welcome to Château de Belcastel. And when you come, tell us you come from l'Union Française, and we will be very happy to have you.
Absolutely. And I will definitely be there as soon as I can. And I urge everybody else from New Orleans to do the same. Go and check it out. It's a cool place. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
All right.
Bonne soirée.